goes back to 1983, when Ohio Democrats in a party line vote shoved it down our throats to get collective bargaining law that local city councils and school boards and taxpayers can't afford anymore. And so here with us is Jim Beakey, state representative in the 77th district, the far left side of the state, even though if you know Jim Beakey, you know that his credentials are to the far right. And I was going to introduce him as Woody Hayes. But Jim can tell you about the 1983 law. Jim.
All right, thank you very much. Representative Mike is right. I take 3 rights to go left. Let me tell you, it's a real pleasure to be here. I, along with Speaker Batchelder, are one of 6 people left in the General Assembly. Were here in 1983 when Senate Bill 133 was rammed down our throats. But there's a second piece of legislation that came through in 83 that is equally bad to where we are today. And that was in the budget. Because in the budget was a 90% increase in the personal income tax. And 40% of that was the funding mechanism to pay for collective bargaining. Fast forward to 2011, we have spent way beyond the inflation rate in this state, and those 2 items are major contributors to the mess that Governor Kasich inherited in January of this year. That's what really caused that was the fire that burned us up. And that's why we've got the mess we're here today. But Governor Kasich came in January. He came in with a Reagan-esque vision. He came in with a plan. And this major plan, with the help of Mr. President D. House and Speaker Batchelder, has been placed, it is working. We are off and winning. We're going to turn Ohio back. Why? Because the impetus on creating jobs, growing the economy. It all goes back to 83, and don't anybody kid you, that the real reason we're here today on issue 2 is because the spenders want the status quo. They don't want change, and they don't want to be accountable. They just want to put their hands out and have more money. Well, we don't have it. And we have a governor who, by example, is leading and doing what is right to get us going the right direction. I
thank you all for coming to Union County, my home county. God bless you for being here today. As Mike said, I'm a pharmacist, and I also own my own business right up the street in Marysville, Ohio. My wife and I started it in 1997. And God has blessed me with the ability of my hands and my brain to make a living and be a participant in this community and fund the activities that allow our community to move forward. But I also handle a lot of prescriptions. When I came into the State House, I have what was called a prescription for Ohio. And I've got a prescription for issue 2. And I want to read some components of this prescription to you and ask you what you think. The first has to do with pensions. If someone puts $1 into their retirement system and it's matched automatically at $1.40, does that sound reasonable to you? If a state teacher or state employee puts $1 of their own money and it's matched at $1.40 and these people are complaining about that, does that seem like a fair deal to them? That's what issue 2 is about here. That's what they're saying is an attack on the middle class.
To read an article that Fran Tarkenton wrote in the Wall Street Journal that came out this past week. I encourage you to Google it. It is absolutely fabulous, and it is related to exactly this fact. What we've got right now, we've got consideration of actual classroom performance and salary increases rather than the traditional step increases based on years of service. We need effective, efficient teachers in front of our children, plain and simple. The last thing that it does for education is LIFO is eliminated. We have some of the most wonderful, innovative people graduating from college right now who go into the classroom, do a year, they're absolutely fabulous, and then in the summer they say, sorry kid, somebody else is going to take your spot. And it's because they have tenure. That's got to stop. Thank you. All taxpayers in Ohio want a great education system, and they have been willing to pay for it up to now. They're fed up. The expenses just supersede everything, and it's not bringing the dollars into the classroom. It's taking dollars away from the classroom. Issue 2 allows a much more prudent way to spend current funds in a much more efficient manner to create the college and career-ready graduate, which allows Ohio to compete in the world market. That's the only way we're going to do it, folks. Education provides us our workforce. I have a quote, I wish it were mine. I can't claim it to be mine, but I want you to think about this. 25% of our population is our children, but they are 100% of our future. We need to make it a good one for them. It's up to us to give them that future, plain and simple. I am going to say thank you very much for having me. I wish you a very beautiful day. God bless you.
The question we faced in the state at the beginning of this session was, did the fact that we were in an $8.5 billion deficit, did that mean that the people of the state were not going to get the services that had been paid for by them already in their taxes? The question is our situation in Ohio fair to those people who are our constituents and who are engaged in trying to make a living in this state? That is the issue before us this afternoon. Can you imagine a city, one of the 8 largest cities in the state of Ohio, being in a position where they have to have help from the state auditor to meet their obligations? It's not that the state hasn't done things for them. As a matter of fact, the state has helped them to retain the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company headquarters in Akron. This governor has leaned over backwards to see to it that we retain the kinds of jobs that we need. And yet we are faced today with the fact of the virtual potential insolvency of this city. That's true in a number of other cities and in a number of the places around Ohio which have failed to deal fairly with their taxpayers. Fairness really is the issue in this campaign. Are we being fair to children whose parents have paid taxes when in fact we know very well that in many of these cities, particularly the large urban centers, they are unable to provide the kind of education that they should. We have in this state large school centers where, in fact, those who were honored as being outstanding teachers are laid off because we don't have merit pay. We keep people on the payroll if they're breathing. That's not a very good measure of competency or merit. We owe it to the people of this state to pass this issue. The legislature went through a very difficult time getting this particular piece of legislation passed. We looked at the problems around the state, and we were well aware that unless this is done, we are going to be facing terrible problems in Ohio's future. $8.5 billion. No merit pay. Cities that are having difficulty discerning whether they're going to be able to do what they're obligated to do. Employees being paid on average a 43% payment above the average working person doing what they are doing. Thank goodness that my colleague, the President of the Senate, and our governor, who is a tremendous national leader and figure, have been willing to show the courage that they have shown in the face of these difficult times. Incidentally, for those who are unaware of this, the $8.5 billion is about 17% of the state budget, and the Democrats had a plan. They had a plan to take care of that deficit. It's called tax increase. And so it is that we're here today to ask you to help us to complete the work that has been done in the General Assembly. If we do not do that, then we may well, in the near future, face other businesses that want to leave the state. We may well face different cities that are in difficulty with the Auditor of State. We may face problems in the state of Ohio, like they've had in Rhode Island, they have had in Michigan, and so forth. Let's have Ohio be great again, and let us not, under any circumstance, surrender to those who are interested in their own welfare and not in that of the people. Thank you.
You know, why can't the politicians just do what's right instead of just doing what's politically expedient? Well, earlier this year, we did what was right. We introduced and we passed and the governor signed Senate Bill 5 because it was the right thing to do. You've heard a little bit about as Senator Burke said, the prescription for Senate Bill 5 and what the ingredients are of Senate Bill 5. But let me tell you, get it working. There we go. So you've heard about the what the ingredients are of Senate Bill 5, so I'm not going to repeat those. It is about fairness. It is about making sure that what we do in the state of Ohio is sustainable. But in order for us to proceed, we need your help, because we've done all we can legislatively. The bill's been passed, the bill's been signed, but now we need people like yourselves to go out and talk to your friends and neighbors and tell them about what is in Senate Bill 5. What you're seeing on TV from our opposition is a campaign of fear. We're not going to have enough firefighters. You know, teachers are going to be thrown out of the classroom. And the reason they're using a fear campaign is they don't have facts on their side. But we need you to help cut through that muddle. We need you to make it clear to your friends and your neighbors that let's talk about the facts of Senate Bill 5. Let's talk about the ingredients of Senate Bill 5 that Senator Burke referenced. Because at the end of the day, when you look at those ingredients, you're going to say, that's reasonable. I have to contribute to my health care. I have to contribute to my retirement. It's reasonable that we ask our public workers to do the same. This is not an attack on unions. This is not an attack on unions, either private sector or public sector. This is about a fundamental issue of fairness. And all we're asking public sector workers to do is pay their fair share, just like you do every day. But there are only 3 of us, and while we've been traveling the state for the past 4 months, I think people are probably getting tired of seeing some of us. But you're the ones that can carry that message. You're the ones that can sit down with your friends, teacher friends, firefighter friends, and say, listen, let's just talk about the facts. You know, there's this fear that we're not going to have enough safety equipment for firefighters and police. The one thing that is very clear in the bill is that they can bargain for safety equipment. So this idea that they're going to be sent into the field to protect us without the proper equipment is just an outright lie. There's no other way to put it. But they say it because it's scary. And we need you to be willing to stand with us and fight back that fear. This is a solid piece of legislation that brings much needed reforms to the state of Ohio. It will impact all of us. It will allow us to put our schools and our cities on a sustainable path for growth. Because eventually, we need to have these changes. We've got to have them if we're going to succeed. But we can't do it without your help. And it is not enough just to vote on election day or vote early. You need to get others to come to the polls with you. You need to encourage others to learn the facts about Senate Bill 5, Issue 2. You need to work with them to get their yes vote on Issue 2, so that we all benefit from the work that was started earlier this year, but that can only be completed with your active participation. I'm going to thank you in advance for your willingness to do that. I think the fact that you're here today shows that you're willing to give up your time for what you believe is a great cause, and it is the right time to get involved. Thank you for what you're going to do to help convince your friends and neighbors to vote yes on Issue 2.
Read in the paper the other day about the fact that Sears reportedly has come to Columbus, thinking about whether maybe they might move their business here. Now, I can't tell you that Sears would move out of Illinois, because believe me, up in Illinois they're going to give them everything they want, okay? But I can tell you this. Isn't it great that we have companies that are now coming into Ohio to think about bringing jobs here, rather than companies leaving Ohio? And I've got to say that my friend Bill Batchelor, Tom Niehaus, Mike Duffy, the other members of the legislature that were here, folks, we were $8 billion in the hole. The largest deficit that Ohio had ever faced in its history. We're talking Ohio. When I came here in 1970 to go to Ohio State, it was the promised land. It was inconceivable to me that the state of Ohio had run so far behind in its bills that it was billions of dollars in the hole, going to Washington with a tin cup asking people to bail us out. That's something that I would expect from people in California. And look, you know the easy way? Raise taxes. Okay, that's the easy way. Do you understand that, oh, in California they keep raising taxes, and every day there's another series of business people that are leaving. You look at the Rhode Island and some of the states that Bill mentioned. You see, if you want to start a business, are you going to start a business where the government is going to pound you? If you want to start a small business, are you going to go to a place, a city that's on fiscal emergency, not knowing what's going to happen? You know the reason we have trouble in this country today is because no business people are willing to invest because they don't feel good about the future. So we face this $8 billion deficit. And what we knew was not philosophy or republicanism or conservatism or anything else. We knew one simple fact. That if we raised taxes in Ohio, we were going to make this state less competitive and drive more businesses out. And folks, over the last 10 years, Ohio's lost 600,000 jobs, and in the last 4 years, we lost 400,000 jobs. And you know what? Only Michigan, that is in a depression because of the auto industry, and California, because they're filled with a bunch of wackadoodles, they're the only two states in America. Think about this. They're the only two states in America that lost more jobs than our precious Buckeye State. Think about that. How is it possible that Ohio got itself into a position where we were getting cleaned out by everybody else? How did we ever lose our way? And so we said it's time for a new day and a new way of doing things. And not based on taking polls, because I tell you something. The people that take polls don't know how to lead. The people that know how to lead don't pay attention to them. You know why? Because leadership is walking a lonely road. And who were some of our great leaders? Well, of course, we know about Reagan. Okay, we know about, well, Abraham Lincoln, we know about Martin Luther King, and we look across the channel and we see Winston Churchill, never popular, because they saw what was coming and they acted to stop it. And I remember just recently the sainted Ronald Reagan. I remember when he was just a man and not a saint. In 1982, nobody would appear with him. In Ohio, our statewide candidates kept away from him, which was great because I got to spend a lot more time with him because I liked the people who were changing. And our leaders have frankly become fed up with doing nothing. 1/3 of our young people going to our great universities, they leave. Why do they leave? Nothing exciting for them to do. Where are they going? Oh, they're going to Austin, Texas. Or they're going down to the Triangle down in North Carolina. They're going to places where they think they can find their hopes and dreams. And when your young people leave, the future's not bright. And when your most successful entrepreneurs leave, and I like to say, if you want to meet a successful, charitable giving, business creating Ohio, when you go to Naples, Florida. That's not where we want them to be. We want them to be here. And why? Because people that know how to create jobs are precious. People who know how to bring change. You know, right up until the day they put him in the ground, Stephen Jobs was being criticized. Now we look at him today and say he was on the order of Edison. What he did to transform the world. So we looked at this and said, no way can we do business as usual. And we set out on a big reform agenda, not a cutting agenda. Oh yes, some things ought to be cut out of all of our family budgets. Not ice cream for me, but some things should be cut. But we were in a reform mode. And let me give you one of them. Mom and Dad get sick. They get old. We were not allowing them to stay in their own home with a little bit of help. We shipped them off to a nursing home. Sick. Some very sick. And they find most of their care in the emergency room. We all know you can't get healthy just visiting an emergency room. So we've now provided a mechanism where they can be healthier, more secure, less frightened, and we all save money. You see, it's reform, providing a better product at a lower price. You know, in the universities, you know what the cost of tuition is today. You know, for 134 years in the state, if you wanted to build a building, you had to hire major contractors to do every single piece of the building. That drove up the cost 20–30%. For 134 years, this law stood. Doesn't stand anymore. Now it's a single prime contractor, and Gordon Gee says he will save 20–30% of the cost of building that cancer center up there at Ohio State. That serves the public and our students and our schools. Can you imagine having a child go to a school where the results are terrible? Could you imagine putting your flesh and blood into a school system which performs at the bottom 5% in this state year after year after year? You ought to see the movie Waiting for Superman. When moms and dads say, why does my kid have to go there? I don't have any money. And because of the leadership of the legislature, and most particularly the Speaker, we've now extended 60,000 vouchers to moms and dads to get their kids out of a failing school. And we are setting them free. Let me tell you something else that doesn't really represent some raw meat kind of thing. But you know, we were sticking 12,000 Ohioans in the state prison, non-violent offenders in the state prison, and sitting them for less than a year, and sitting them next to somebody who was a rapist, a murderer, or a big-time drug dealer, and we keep them in there for 6 months, and then we release them and think we did a great job. Our prisons were exploding. Violence was growing. But you know what we said? You can give people a second chance. People make mistakes. And we're going to confine them in a setting where the public is safe, but we give them an opportunity to come back and be productive citizens again. And you know where that comes from? That comes from faith. That comes from the sense that from the fact that many people can be redeemed. And we don't want to create something worse in an individual. And so we showed compassion. And in the course, we're going to reduce the costs of our state prisons. We're going to lower the recidivism rate. And in the last 2 months, violence in our state prisons, because we cracked down on those who are violent in prison, violence has been down in the last 2 months by 50%. Goal. It's not the statute, it's not the laws, it's you know what it is? It's creating an environment in Ohio where people want to start their businesses and where business people want to expand them. You know, I grew up in a little blue-collar town outside of Pittsburgh, and my dad carried mail on his back for 29 years. And my mother was in and out of the workforce, you know, just trying to earn a... You know, my mother wouldn't take a bus. She'd rather walk a mile and save what it cost back then, maybe a quarter? Probably less than a quarter, because she wanted her kids to have something. And my parents lived a frugal life. But my mother and father always told me one thing, and it is, well, a lot of things, but one thing they always told me is, Johnny, when a person has a job, they're happy. The family's happy. The kids are healthier. Johnny, it's what it's all about. And in McKees Rocks, when the wind blew the wrong way, people found themselves without a job. Think about what it's like to have to go home one night and tell your spouse and your children, I lost my job today. Do you realize there's some here that have had to do that? And there's some here that that's never happened to. But think about yourself in their shoes, telling their children, I lost my job. Kids, Christmas is not going to be quite as good this year. Be patient. You see, I learned as a kid, it's all about work. And it's about faith, and it's about family. That's what it's about. And so we have spent our time trying to figure out how to fix Ohio, to make it a job-producing state, not a job-losing state. And we took our Department of Development that moves at the speed of the statute. Now, I saw a race between a statute and a glacier. You know what that means? That means a businessman calls the government and they can't return a phone call. They can't respond. They can't get out of their own way. So working with these gentlemen and the members of the legislature, we privatized our Department of Development. And now we're going to move the liquor profits that have been in the state since the 1920s into this entity so we will have the resources we need to create jobs. And let me tell you this. I got some news for you. These statistics are old. They only go through August. We have engaged in 154 different projects working with businesses to make them stronger. American Greetings, which was thinking about leaving Cleveland, stayed. Diebold, which was a big competitor of NCR that left Dayton and blew a hole in that city, they're now building their world headquarters in Canton and saving the Akron-Canton Airport. Wendy's. In 1977, I met Dave Thompson. I never dreamt that, 40 years later approximately, I'm involved in getting Wendy's to come back from Georgia and get back to its home in Dublin where it belongs. thinking about going to Texas, we said no way, no how. And Omnicare just moved to Ohio from Kentucky, and the people in Kentucky were complaining that the governor of Ohio is trying to steal all of our jobs. It's about time. We created over 10,000 new jobs in Ohio. That's 10,000 families, 10,000 families. And we've been able to retain over 20,000 jobs. And you know what the payroll is when you put all that together for Ohio? $1.7 billion to our good. And we have $1.5 billion in new capital investment in our state to make us stronger and more viable as a state that can provide the help that families want. That's in 8 months, folks. That is a pretty darn good record. Issue 2. Well, yeah, it's about fairness. I mean, seriously, you think about a single mom with a couple kids. She has very expensive health care, if she has it at all. She has no pension. You know she has no pension. She may have a 401k. And she's paying not only for what it costs to take care of her own family, but she's paying for somebody that doesn't want to pay 15% of their health care or 10% of their guaranteed pension. Who's going to stand up for that single mom with the kids? Going to let somebody else, or are we going to stand up for that lady? Huh? Let's get her a break. On the middle class. It is. It's an attack by people who say the middle class ought to keep paying not just for their own benefits, but for somebody else that doesn't want to pay. The time has come to level the playing field. And here's the thing, folks, look. And you know, Tom Niehaus said it best. I come from a union household. I come from a union town. You know what I learned back at McKees Rocks? We all pitch in. Everybody pitch. We don't say you pitch in and I'm not. We say everybody pitches in, and we honor the work of everybody who's out there plugging away. But we got a lot of people, a lot of families making a lot of sacrifices in this state. Over 9% unemployment still. A lot of people have made sacrifices. We're just asking people to pay a little bit more. But let me tell you about something else. If you cannot control your personnel costs, you will find yourself in a circumstance where you keep raising taxes. And at some point, people say, I can't afford anymore. And there are cities in this state that are going on fiscal emergency. Do you remember when Cleveland was melting down before George Voinovich went in and straightened it out? You see, this is about the strength of our communities. It is about the ability to have a job-creating environment. And it is about our kids. I look over here at this little boy, and he's already on his, he's already tweeting, or I don't know what he's doing to somebody over here. Okay? You see, I don't want him to leave Ohio. I don't want him in Austin, Texas, or down in the Triangle, or down in Alabama, or Florida. I want him in Ohio. Where are our kids going to go? Where are we going to go? But a policy that lets the best and the brightest be let go because they were the last ones hired, so therefore they should be the first ones hired? Where do they do that? Where do they even come up with something like that? Seniority matters, but that's not all that matters. It's about your skills and your dedication to your kids. That's what it's about. And I give a lot of compliments to the teachers that have stood up, and because it does take courage. Mike Duffy talked about it. It does. Do you know why mayors and school board members won't stand up for issue 2? Because they're afraid that if they do, that they will be defeated in the next election. That's fear. And you know, old Franklin Roosevelt said it best, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. It's a test for everybody. It's a test for people to stand up and say we all got to be part of this. It's a test for people to stand up and say I want our communities to be healthy. It's a test for all of us to say that forget the politics of the past, let's do what's right. Let's create an environment where families can be healthier, where children can be pulled out of poverty, because we're doing it in Ohio. It is happening right now. So folks, we don't take this on out of some anger like I see so much out of the other side. We take this out of the commitment to our families and our children. Now we've got about a month to go. You got to get out and pass the word. I believe this will make Ohio healthier. I think it will help us to attract more jobs and to help companies that are here expand more jobs. Because if we lead in Ohio, we can help the rest of the country find its way. Now folks, all of us together, and you go to the coffee pot and you're standing around, let people know how we're doing and ask them to stand with us to build a stronger and stronger Ohio. It is the right thing to do, and will be looked upon by the entire rest of the country as a model as to how we can get our bearings again in a confused world. I want to thank my partners in the legislature. They've been tough. They will continue to be tough because we're going to put Ohioans and Ohio families and children first. Thank you all very much.